is Charlotte's Bug. And we'll see who's on the plate here momentarily.
And this is another match, where Joe's being rewarded for the way that he's decided to build his deck. 4 main deck copies of True Name Nemesis, really trying to prey on the honest decks this weekend. And another relatively honest opponent this round in Andrew Tenjum.
And it looks like whoever wins this match is probably going to be able to draw in the top 8. As you see, Bernal is going to start with Marsh Flats, getting an Underground Sea into a Deathrite Shaman. We'll see if Tenjum has a Deathrite Shaman of his own Accelerator, or perhaps a discard spell after he does get done shuffling Bernal's deck. This matchup is the Battle of Fair decks, but it is pretty back and forth.
Yes. And there's also unfair elements. People can get wastelanded out of games occasionally, or people can have their entire hands blown up through Hymn to Torak, and so people can definitely have their resources attacked very aggressively. Just because it is fair Magic does not necessarily mean that someone is going to be playing Magic.
That's true. You make a very, very good point. As a Flooded Strand is going to be sacrificed here, Bernal's going to go down to 18. We'll see which dual land he's going to search out. It's going to be a scrub land.
Yeah, the priority for Joe is to get black assembled, as he has Liliana the Veil and Hymn to Torak in his deck. He also needs blue and white mana for various Swords to Plowshares and Brainstorms and whatnot. So this is a pretty standard opening in terms of mana for Joe.
See if Joe has a Hymn to Torak to cast, maybe. Again, he's probably aware of what Tenjum is playing, as these guys are quite familiar with each other, playing in the same area, and this is all. You see these guys at just about every Midwest tournament, so.
I think Joe might just be debating just letting it rip with True Name Nemesis right now.
I kind of like it. I mean, if he knows Tenjum at all, which again, we believe that he does, he knows that he plays Charlotte's Bug quite a bit, and that Daze or something of that nature is not something that's really on the radar. Yeah, he's going to use this, and he's going to do this. So there is a True Name Nemesis. And
looks like it's good.
Yeah, looks like that's good.
And this puts a lot of pressure on Tenjum to cobble together, as you see him draw Force of Will a bit late here, cobble together something like Abrupt Decay into Liliana. It requires a sequence of spells at this point for him to catch up to this.
Now, he does have both of those cards in his hand right now. The problem here is that Bernal actually has, things to do. He's going to start by paying a Polluted Delta. Looks like he might fire off a Hymn to Torak here.
This is just an incredible opening from Joe here.
I mean, this really just exhibits the power of Deathrite Shaman and the fact that this deck, this sort of strategy can accelerate into playing 2 spells a turn.
Yeah.
By the 3rd turn of the game. Of course, Legacy cards, they're going to have lower mana costs because you want to interact as fast as you possibly can. You see Force of Will. Going to remove a Shardless Agent here. To pay the alternate cost, Tenjum's going to go down to 19. Hymn to Torak basically did its job. The big issue here is that Bernal has a follow-up play. So the plan that we talked about with Abrupt Decay, your Deathrite Shaman, then cast Liliana, take your Retreating Nemesis. Well, the thing is that something that's going to get in the way here. It's a Stoneforge mistake.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's not just Liliana the Veil that Andrew needs. It's to get Joe's board entirely clear. So all these various 1-2s accumulating on the board are really bad for Andrew.
Shaman's going to remove Polluted Delta for some mana. You see Joe's going to go reach out the old Stoneforge. That's good to go.
You see Joe shortcutting rather a little bit here through his shuffling.
Now, obviously, the big question here is, was Tenjum just supposed to Abrupt Decay right away so that Joe didn't get the opportunity to use Deathrite Shaman for mana? Had he done that, then he counters either be it Stoneforge Mystic or Hymn to Torak, and then the following turn casts the Liliana that's in his hand, makes him sacrifice True Name Nemesis. We're talking about a different game.
Yeah, he's playing around something here, although Joe still could have deployed Stoneforge Mystic in that world and not him.
Yeah.
But it is a little curious to allow Joe to untap with the Deathrite Shaman there.
So after Joe searches his deck a whole bunch via the fetch lands and everything else, gets a Batter Skull, presents. He's happy after getting in for 3. Tenjum goes down to 16. We move to his turn. There's an Abrupt Decay on the end step. Bye-bye Stoneforge Mystic. Tenjum will take a draw here. It's like a Deathrite Shaman has been added to the grip. Here's a Trop. There's a Deathrite. You see Tenjum is going to cast Tarmogoyf now as well. And we'll get the die out there and let you guys know at home exactly how large that Lurgoyf is, as Bernal is going to untap. He'll take a draw to scrub land.
But unfortunately, Joe looks... He's going to go a different route here. I was about to say Joe looks primed to assemble the same combination of cards we saw him take down a match earlier, which was equipment on True Nemesis, but we're on a 1-turn delay here as Batterskull is deployed.
Yeah. Soon enough.
Yeah, the combo Voltron's about to be assembled here.
And there is BBD making its appearance onto the Batterskull. So, again, every turn of this game has been just all insanely good cards from Joe.
Yeah.
Scary deck to play against. Its power level's through the roof.
Is Underground seeing the Birds of Paradise with extra utility good in Legacy?
Yeah, I would argue the answer is yes. As here's a Thought Seize. Bernal's going to show a Liliana Veil and a Force of Will. Force of Will not at its best in this particular matchup. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Tenjum just leave Bernal with that card and then take care of that Liliana. But we'll see. We'll see.
I mean, if Joe finds another mana source, that Force of Will is perfectly fine here too, given how far ahead he is on board.
Yeah, I mean, he theoretically has 5 mana in play. He's got the 4 lands, and then the Deathrite Shaman can't add a mana right now, excuse me, but assuming that a fetch land or even a base or any land comes off the top here for Bernal, he can cast that. So he opts to take the Force of Will, knowing that, okay, I have to play around Liliana. See what the follow-up's going to be. All right, so there is that land for Deathrite Shaman. But Tenjum's going to sacrifice Verdant Catacombs, take another one, go down to 10. Let's see what land he wants to search up. It's going to be an Underground Sea. And I think we might see Liliana show up here. I think the Tenjum's thought process is, well, Liliana's not going to be great, but I got to get something off the board with it because I can't really set up anything better. So there is the Planeswalker.
He certainly can't say go from this position.
Yeah,
so
of course not.
You know, Andrew was certainly hoping to set up a better board, but that just might not be in the cards.
I'm just going to take it up. Okay. Interesting. Make Bernal lose that Liliana. Pass the turn back.
That Goyf is now going up to a 5/6 as Verdant Catacombs into the graveyard, as has a Planeswalker.
Big problem here is that I think Trinity Nemesis is ready to hold a Batterskull. And that is no fun for anyone. As Bernal does have 4 mana, and then Deathrite Shaman be able to provide the 5th mana via its activation, removing the Verdant Catacombs.
It's not clear to me if Joe necessarily wants to do that, as there's some risk involved there. Unless Joe is willing to move and then just attack Liliana with his True Name Nemesis, which is fine. If he loses the Germ token and leaves Liliana in play, then all that just requires a removal spell for Andrew to be able to tag the True Name Nemesis with Liliana's Edict effect.
Yeah, I think if I'm Bernal in this situation, I equip my True Nemesis with Batterskull and just kill Liliana, get my life or whatever, and just move forward from there.
Yeah, I think Joe might be taking a slightly different tact. Remember, he's kind of threatening, he's getting close to threatening lethal just with the Deathrite Shamans. He doesn't need to do it all through True Name Nemesis. So as long as he can keep that Liliana pinned down and prevent it from killing any of his creatures, he can lead on Deathrite Shaman to do a lot of the work and then eventually finish off the game with True Name Nemesis if he's feeling so inclined.
And of course, by no means am I saying my play is, the appropriate one. I think just, I tend to lean towards a more aggressive style, using all my mana, that sort of thing. So we'll see. As of course, one thing that Tenjum could do is use his Deathrite Shaman, remove the Verdant Catacombs in response too. Yeah. So, if Tenjum goes that route, then Joe doesn't get the 5th mana to be able to equip his to be able to activate the equip on Batterskull. So what we just see is True Nemesis come across for 3 points of damage after it's all said and done, after all the speculating. This is a Baleful Strix. That'll draw Tenjum a card.
And what is nice about this from Joe's perspective is, in the event that Andrew decides to minus Liliana, he can just sacrifice the Germ with the intent of then moving the Batterskull onto the True Name Nemesis. Yep. So he kind of has some free insurance against the Edict. And in the interim, he can use his Deathrite Shamans.
There's another Deathrite Shaman that was drawn off the Baleful Strix. So the board's getting cluttered up, but one of these players has True Nemesis and one of them doesn't. And Tenjum doesn't even have access to True Nemesis in his deck, as he's going to up Liliana and pass the turn back. Bernal going to activate his Deathrite Shaman. And don't forget, Tenjum can activate his in response if he'd like. As Deathrite Shaman's a little bit unique because it says target this. And so Tenjum says target that instead. So I'll take it before you. And yeah, now Bernal says, okay, if you do that, I'm just going to put my Batterskull and kill you. And that's exactly what happens. So we see Joe Bernal win game number 1 here. over Andrew Tenjum. Esper Deathblade up a game over Charlotte's Bug. So we'll take a look at Tenjum's sideboard. That's where the fun begins. He's got an additional Force of Will, 3 copies of Golgari Charm, 4 Hymn to Torak, a Maelstrom Pulse, 2 Massacres, 2 Nile Spellbombs, an Ocean Thief, and 2 Vendilion Clicks. We saw last time we watched Tenjum play board in Notion Thief, I believe. We also saw Massacres and Golgari Charms come. He's got 4 ways to kill True Nemesis.
Yeah.
Which is obviously quite powerful.
Yeah. It's critical in this matchup, too, because as you saw in that game, True Nemesis required so much effort from Andrew to try to answer it.
You obviously like him to Torak in kind of matchups like this. It is quite the powerful discard spell. It's a pretty grinding matchup as well. Not great in the late game, but so good in the early game that it's worth probably having a couple copies. Vendilion Click, I mean, that card's just awesome. So, I think you can make an argument for sideboarding it against any deck.
Sure.
Other than that, I think the Force Wills are going to come out. But Tenjum is very adept at playing this deck, so I'll be interested to see exactly what he does.
And on the other side, Joe has 2 Pithing Needles, and Engineered Explosives, and Engineered Plague. Enlightened Tutor, a Rest in Peace, Counterspell, 3 Swan Songs, 3 Flusterstorms, a Humility, and a Detention Sphere. I actually don't expect him to move too much around here, as his main deck is very well situated for fighting decks like Bug. I do anticipate that he'll bring in the Rest in Peace to fight over Tarmogoyf. I expect the Detention Spear to come in as sort of a catch-all removal spell. And then maybe or maybe not the Counterspell, but I really wouldn't expect him to go too crazy beyond that. Joe's deck is really, as I mentioned when we first cut into the match, very well situated for fighting against honest decks with equipment and a full playset of True Nemesis, Liliana the Veil, 4 full playset of Swords to Plowshares, that he doesn't really need to sideboard that much for these kind of matchups. We've had Joe on camera so far. This is the second match. He played against Matt Hoey playing a different build of Bug, and now Andrew Tenjum, and he has sawed through them all 3 games so far. We have yet to see a game that even really looked that competitive, as Joe's deck is very well situated for this kind of matchup.
Yeah, it really seems that Joe is just, as you said, really situated for the fair matchups. When he's got 4 true names, he's obviously very comfortable playing Stoneforge Mystic. Deathrite Shaman's a fantastic card, and all the spells are very powerful.
Yeah.
I've always been a really big fan of this deck, I will say. Even though it's not really a deck I would ever really consider playing, it's just because it's really not my speed. Can't argue the power level and just the results of Esper Deathblade. It's so good.
Modern creatures and spells from the 90s.
Yeah.
It's a really good recipe for Legacy.
It really is.
Really good recipe.
Busted creatures, and as you said, spells from the 90s, because the spells then were way better than they are now.
Swords of Plowshare, Brainstorm, Force of Will, Hymn to Torak.
Get
some
you
good ones.
Get you some. Equipment from the 2000s.
Yeah.
Yeah. We do dabble here in Legacy. We do dabble. Not to say that Charlotte's Bug isn't a great deck, because it certainly is, but if I had to choose one of the 2, I'd get me some Esper Deathblade action going.
Certainly for this matchup. I think that if we saw Joe play against more combo on camera, we might see him struggle, where Tenjum's a little bit better situated in my mind. But again, in these honest matchups, anything kind of creature and removal spell oriented, Joe's build of this deck is fantastic for that kind of field.
Yeah. So you just see both players shuffling up here. Bernal going back to, looks like the drawing board briefly. But as we do watch these 2 players finish getting prepared for game number 2, we want to thank you guys for joining us here in St. Louis. Cedric Phillips, Patrick Sullivan, Star City Games Open Series. Our Legacy Open, we're in round 8 of 9, a little fun storyline that's taking place. Our champion earlier today, Jonathan Habel, he's X-1 in this tournament.
Yeah, we made a pretty big deal out of this in Orlando when Tyler Wilkerson looked like he might be making a similar run, as Wilkerson was put up quite a clinic during the Legacy portion.
Yeah.
He wasn't, didn't have an early loss. He ran through the Swiss rounds, but we, again, might be looking at Jerry Thompson's, as of right now, untouched record of winning both the Standard and Legacy Open in the same weekend, in doubt.
Somebody get Jerry T on the horn. Blow up his Twitter. Let him know.
Jerry knows. Anytime it's happening, yeah. I think someone sends out the bat signal and lets Jerry know that the record might be in jeopardy.
Maybe there's a little sense. A little tingling goes on for Jerry. Someone trying to take my record. Did you know that Jerry in the Standard Open of that tournament, he lost round 1?
No, I did not know that.
He decided, I'm not losing anymore. No, seriously. I'm not losing anymore this weekend. And then he ended up winning a whole bunch. Hoisting the trophy twice.
It's just, it should go without saying, but it's just really hard to do when you're talking about a 600-person and 300-person tournament, factoring in the mental fatigue of running deep in the first day, exactly how hard that is to accomplish.
Different formats.
Yeah.
So you have to prepare for 2 different, completely. Playing Standard is a completely different skill set than playing Legacy.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
Yeah, it's just crazy. And that was, I believe, during like the call blade time too.
Yeah,
when standard was really hard.
Not short rounds.
Yeah.
The closest I ever came to doing something like that was I lost playing for top 8 in the Standard Open and then top 4 the Legacy Open the next day, and my brain was fried.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was shot for days.
Yeah, I similar experience of me in Seattle last year. I top 4'd in the Standard Open, and then got 9th place in the Legacy Open the next day. And like you, I had to go home and recuperate. I didn't do very much on Monday. You see a creeping tar pit here to start for Tenjum. Bernal with just a polluted Delta. And now Tenjum's going to sacrifice Misty Rainforest.
That was disappointing, as that Standard Open was when I was playing the zombie walking corpse deck, and of all the craptacular decks I've had some tournament success with, that would have been an especially charming one to have.
Walking corpse is just what a delight.
Just delightful.
The old grizzly bear.
2 different opponents picked it up and read it, assuming it had a power.
Well, it had a story to tell.
Yeah, it did.
That's part of the You see a Tarmogoyf here, going to be a 1-2, as there is only a land in the graveyard right now. Bernal's going to sacrifice the polluted Delta. We'll see what land he does search out. Might be a Swords on the end step. We'll see. I think it's going to be a Swords on the end step.
Yeah, and it feels, watching these games, a big edge that Joe has against decks like Bug is it feels really hard for Tarmogoyf to make much of an impact against him.
Certainly the first Tarmogoyf.
All the removal spells and True Name Nemesis is just, what are the odds this thing goes all the way, as we're familiar with it doing sometimes in Legacy?
Yeah, it feels like decks are beginning to just make it, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, beginning to just make Tarmogoyf obsolete. You see, they're trying to figure out how much life is gained here because, an instant goes to the graveyard, Tarmogoyf is a thing, it's going to become a 2/3, so how much life do I actually gain? And they'll get it all sorted out here as we do move forward. Stoneforge Mystic off the top here for Bernal. You can't just cast a Hymn to Torak, though. Get ya. That's what he's going to do.
Just fire this one off.
It's funny we kind of question the inclusion of Hymn to Torak, but, I mean, this card is ridiculous.
Yeah. It's funny to think about a format powerful enough where Hymn to Torak could be a cuttable card in your base black deck.
Yeah. See, it takes down a Wasteland and a Polluted Delta. Now, Tenjum does have an Underground Sea, and he can't cast Liliana, but he's also got a Brainstorm. Actually, 2 of them. He's going to start by Brainstorming. And Bernal in the tank. He says, all right, that's fine. So 2 and 3.
And I think that was a little posturing by Joe there. I don't think he was really seriously considering Force of Willing that Brainstorm, even if he had access to it, which I don't believe he does.
Yeah, I would be very surprised if Joe has Force of Will in his deck after sideboard, but as you said, the posturing that takes place there is key. As Tenjum does put 2 cards back, does not put a fetch land in play, instead an Underground Sea, so not going to be a perfect Brainstorm here, as Bernal does have another copy of Hymn to Torak in his hand. Going to start by playing a Marsh Flats, going to follow this up by tapping 2, and the discard spell.
And all of this is trying to just open up the avenue for something like Stoneforge Mystic to go uncontested.
3 cards, you get to keep 1. So we're probably going to see 1 die roll here. Yeah. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is a 1. So here are the 2 cards for Tenjum. Brainstorm and Abrupt Decay, those are a delight.
And it appears as though Joe has sided in the Singleton Engineered Explosives in his sideboard.
There's a Liliana. Boy, has that got some work to do.
Yeah. Andrew's just down so much in terms of raw resources.
Yeah, I mean, Hymn to Torak,
Got him twice.
Yeah. It's just a walking 2-for-1.
You got to be doing something real special to beat 2 early Hymn to Toraks in a fair slow game.
That's why, him might be better than like a Thoughtseize effect, because Thoughtseize is obviously just a 1-for-1, but him, just if you go him you, I mean, they're down 4 cards, you're down 2, and you're just trying to trade resources at that point and then catch back up, and it's so hard to do when you're down 4 cards.
Right, they're very different cards. Thoughtseize is about, I care about something particular going on in your hand. Him is just, I want to play a game where we're just counting up who has more cards at the end of it, and if I have more, I feel like I'm favored.
You're going to see a Brainstorm response to Liliana here. Joe wants to get some more information on what the appropriate discards are.
It's rare that you see an end of turn Brainstorm from a player of Joe's caliber, as usually you'd like to do on your main phase after you've drawn a card. To me, this is Joe signaling that he has he believes he will be tapping out next turn.
Yeah.
He needs access to all of his mana.
And, this particular brainstorm, obviously, in response to Liliana, because, again, he knows that Liliana's going to be ticking up, so he wants to know exactly what he's going to discard right now, but what he's going to be doing moving forward for the next couple of turns. And because he does have a shuffle effect in Stoneforge Mystic, he needs to know what cards he's comfortable putting away. And now you see he's really going to take his time here because brainstorming ain't easy.
No.
And he's not really AJ Soccer glacial speed because there can only be one AJ when it comes to brainstorming, but he's taking his time. I'll give AJ credit, though. He makes a show of his brainstorms.
Oh, yeah.
From the way he casts it to the way he draws the cards and puts them back.
It's for public consumption.
It may take about 4 or 5 minutes, but it does look pretty good. He's going to discard Ponder to Liliana. This is very quick. This is an explosives past the turn back. That's Tenjum without cards and discard an Abrupt Decay, which would take care of the explosives. So, well, had it.
Oh, and you can see heartbreak by that reaction by Joe. He set this all up to be able to explosives away, Liliana, play his Stoneforge Mystic on an uncontested board and run away with the game, and now that's all shot.
I would say the strategy got blown up by a top deck Abrupt Decay. Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
Still got it.
And she was like, I don't want that to go. Fine. As Liliana's going to take up to 5. There goes Swords. Well, if there's one card that can get you up, it is Liliana the Veil. Tenjum's playing off the top of his deck, but he's got a good card in play.
And what's really nice for Tenjum is the card that buried him in the first game, True Name Nemesis, he's got that on check for the time being.
2, 3. Batterskull Delta Undergrounds here. The card shown off Brainstorm to go along with the Stoneforge Mystic in Bernal's hand. So we'll see how he wants to finish off this Brainstorm. If he wants to fetch to make it a, quote, perfect one, unquote. We'll see.
Feels like he almost certainly wants to be keeping Stoneforge here.
Yeah, even though it's so unexciting. I don't disagree with you.
He just needs to do something to prevent this Liliana from ticking up yet another turn.
Yeah. And Joe is going to play Stoneforge Mystic. Going to search out G-Tain and just put it directly into play and pass the turn back. So both players empty-handed. Tenjum, what does he find? Even a land here for Tenjum's good. He's going to tick this down. Yep, he's going to get a Misty Rainforest. Sacrifice, go to 19. Search out a dual land. Probably fire up the old tar pit and get in the red zone.
Yeah. Another card that's really well suited to the running your opponent out of resources game is Liliana the Veil.
Yeah. And even though there's a double him here, it's actually Tenjum the one that's in the lead right now.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, Liliana the Veil really has a nice stranglehold on this game. Now, it certainly doesn't hurt about that top decked Abrupt Decay. But
yeah. Liliana is actually one of the nicer cards to have after you've been hinned a bunch of times because you're much more likely to be empty-handed when you start plussing it. So you take a little sting out of it.
All right, so let's see what's going to happen now for Bernal. He needs a nice one. As these two players basically playing for top 8 here. That's an Underground Sea. Going to put that into play. Pass the turn back. Tenjum will untap. He'll take a draw. This it could be a Brainstorm, and it will be. He's going to use Tar Pit, assuming that he's not sure. He's going to go with Underground Sea. Make sure he has access to all the colors of the rainbow, of course.
Yep.
So Brainstorm's going to resolve. Tenjum's going to draw 1, 2, 3 cards. Let's see if we can see what they are. So another Brainstorm.
Oh, not bad.
That's good.
Not bad.
Charlotte's Agent is going to reveal Ancestral Visions in a moment. Ship them all. 1, 2, 3. That's a good Brainstorm. Did you see that?
I did.
That's a good Brainstorm. Liliana going to tick up now. Tenjum going to discard Thoughtseize. That one's not going to help much. And this is part of the power of this deck in Charlotte's Bug is that it can play a grindy game and it can recover from all the resources being gone. There's a True Name Nemesis that's going to gain an Uzao. But fortunately for Tenjum, he's got the answer right in play.
Not nearly the threat that it was last game.
He's going to start with a Brainstorm. Or is he? There he goes. He can use the Underground Sea to do so. He's got the fetch land already. Remember when Tenjum didn't have any cards in his hand?
Yeah, that.
Me neither.
That felt like a while ago, even though it wasn't.
Liliana going to tick down, of course, take care of True Name. And now Tenjum is the one in the driver's seat. He's going to make it a perfect brainstorm, sacrificing Verdant Catacombs. And we saw him scroll by an Ocean Thief. We are going to try to make a story.
It also appears that he's brought in Massacre as well.
Yeah, of course. Trinity Nemesis deck he's playing against. Not too surprised there at all. Searches out a Bayou. He's going to fire up the old tar pit here. He is. Get across for 5. Going to put Bernal down to 13. As Bernal does shuffle and present it back to Tenjum. That'll end at Tenjum's turn as Bernal will take a draw step. We'll see what he finds. Another true name, maybe? Liliana of his own. Interesting. He's going to take this down, take care of Charlotte's agent, pass the turn back.
Not a terrible draw, but not a great answer long term, as this Creeping Tar Pit has the ability to really suppress the Planeswalker.
Yeah, Tar Pit might be interesting in this deck. You know, it's this, kind of, I guess, average land, I guess one would think, but it plays a big role in this deck.
It's very good in similar types of matchups, as attacking Planeswalkers are a big part of the game.
What's the best one of those lands? It's probably Raging Ravine, right? Oh, Colonnade too?
They're all quite good. I mean, the worst one is Lava Claw Breaches, which is still a totally reasonable tournament level card. I think in Eternal formats, because it's about attacking Planeswalkers and because blue and black are the best colors, I think Creeping Tar Pit is. When you talk about other formats, I think it's more of a toss-up. I think if you introduce those lands into a standard power level format, more often than not, the best one would be Raging Ravine.
Okay.
Would be my guess.
Colonnade was really good. That's
Yes.
for sure. Yeah, and Joe realizes, I can't get myself out of this one. You win, man, with your Ancestral Visions and your Charlotte's Agents. And we're going to play a third one, which is fitting. I think these guys should go to 3. Both 2 very, very good players.
Yeah, and Andrew's deck looked a lot better in the post-board games than we saw in Game 1. You know?
Yeah.
Was able to survive, withstand multiple hymns, and was able to just attrition Joe out, even though Joe's pretty well suited to play that sort of game.
Some would say Andrew got a little bit lucky there by drawing that Abrupt Decay, but it's in your deck so that you can draw it.
And even if he doesn't draw it there, it's not like he's a lock to win to lose that game from there.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
That game's got a long way to go.
Yeah.
That Explosives is just a convenient answer to take care of Liliana. So Joe takes a look at his deck. It looks like he's probably happy with the configuration. He may think things over a little bit more. But Tenjum was going right to the pile shuffling, so he's happy with his 60. The 15 that are hiding out on the board. We're going to see Bernal on the play when we begin this third game.
And I'm really interested to see a game play out where Andrew has a turn 1 Ancestral Visions.
Yeah, me too.
Because it puts Joe under so much more pressure to be proactive.
Yeah.
You can see that he would rather play a game of just attack Andrew's hand and answer his stuff and win kind of at his leisure with Stoneforge Mystic or True Name Nemesis or whatever. And Ancestral Vision makes that gameplay much harder to execute.
So you do see Joe taking a look again. I know you have a sideboard in front of you. You think anything changes now? He's on the play. I mean, we saw Explosives come in. It was one of in his sideboard.
Yeah. I mean, on the play, the one counter spell in his sideboard gets a little bit better. I don't know if that's even a card he's really that interested in, but there's no big difference in my mind. We're certainly not bringing in things like Swan Song, and Humility is not well suited, and I really wouldn't want an Enlightened Tutor package of any sort. And Pithing Needle doesn't, the only card that it really tags of note in Andrew's deck is also in Joe's deck. So there's just, like I said, while they were sideboarding, not a lot that Joe really has access to improve the matchup, because it's all in his main deck, in essence.
Yeah. I do think it's hard to say who's favored in this matchup. I always felt this matchup was just really close. Whenever I think of this matchup between Esper Deathblade and Charlotte's, I think of Brian Bronwyn playing against Jerry Thompson, Invitational top 8 last year, and just those two just slogging it out, going through 5 games. Two of the best players that we see on the Open Series circuit, and Jerry, ended up winning that match and winning that tournament, beating Shaheen in the finals, but. I remember just those guys just really just grind each other down. Really, really long 5-game match.
Yeah, and in the world of pre-True Name Nemesis, it's a real trade fest.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different now. Joe was actually able to win a relatively fast game 1. This matchup used to be really slow.
Yeah.
And it was often determined by Jace the Mind Sculptor, which is, interestingly enough, absent from both of these decks.
Yeah.
And that, I believe, is in part a concession to True Name Nemesis. Jace just doesn't line up very well against that card.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I don't think we've seen many Jaces at all. I don't think we've seen one Jace the Mind Sculptor cast today.
And a year ago or 18 months ago, that was the
blasphemy.
That was the card. I mean, if you had to name the one card in Legacy that ended the most matches, or warranted one of us saying, and this is where player X really starts running away with the game, it was just the Mind Sculptor, and it shows you that context is everything. Legacy has so many awesome cards to choose from, and they all interact against each other in different ways. So something that could be a format-defining staple can be back in your binder the next week.
As these players do shuffle up really quickly, Anonymous Clay asks, how do you define fair and unfair, and are there any decks that fit into both categories?
Decks that fit into both categories, I would say Burn fits into both categories. In some games, it plays fairly honest, interactive matchups, and in some matchups, it's just completely ignoring the cards that you're casting.
Sure.
I would have to think about it a little more. That's an interesting question. Basically, what I mean is by unfair, the decks are trying to overwhelm you, or in some cases prevent you from taking a game action are in that class. So decks that are all about turn one Chalice of the Void for 1, or decks that are all about ad nauseum and killing you very fast, sneak and show. And then the fair decks are the ones that kind of resemble modern and standard decks. They have creatures in them and removal spells, and they're not doing anything much more complicated than trying to do that sort of game. There's a wide array of ways that can identify and look in Legacy, but that's sort of how broad strokes I define the two things.
Joe's hand is powerful, as he has a Brainstorm, a Liliana of the Veil, a Hymn to Torak, and an Engineer Explosives, and a Tundra to go along with the Scrubland and Deathrite Shaman that is in play. Now, there is no fetch land in the graveyard yet. Of course, there probably will be one soon, but once Tenjum takes a look at his hand, I've always felt that when you're casting Thoughtseize against this Esper Deathblade deck, you see a hand like this, I got no idea what you're supposed to do, what you're supposed to take. It's so tough. It's so easy to just say, I'm going to take Brainstorm because, that's arguably the best card in Legacy, and I'll figure something out with the rest of those cards.
Yeah, also because the rest of his hand's not really castable in the short term, that's an even stronger argument. Unless Andrew's hand is really weak to one of these cards in particular, I would just take the Brainstorm here.
We're going to see.
It's hard if you're not that experienced playing Legacy. You're looking at these powerful cards with text boxes, and Brainstorm is basically the mystery box. But it's so much more than that.
Yeah, it sets everything up.
Yeah. You're really putting a lot of pressure on Joe at the minimum to find an Underground Sea or some other black source of mana to cast anything, and really ideally to find a fetch land.
And now he's going to go, he's going to cast the
great
Massacre.
follow-up.
Yeah, that's really good. You see a Ponder off the top here for Tenjum. I'm sure, or for Bernal, I'm sure that Tenjum would have liked to save that for a 2-for-1 or take care of True Name Nemesis, obviously, but that's a pretty nice play there for Tenjum.
Although this is a fairly loaded Ponder for Joe here, as it contains both another Deathrite Shaman and an Underground Sea as an additional source of black mana, which he needs for the Hymn to Torak and Liliana left over in his hand.
Deathrite Shaman's a card he's going to keep on top with Ponder, so no shuffle. He's going to replay Deathrite Shaman and pass the turn back. In Tenjum, you're probably a little bit scared because now that he's had the opportunity to ponder, you're like, okay, there's probably a fetch land hiding out over there as well, or I have a fetch land of my own, so we'll see if he maybe has another removal spell for Deathrite Shaman to contain it.
Yeah. It's funny because with the information that we're working with, this Deathrite Shaman actually is fairly innocuous. We know this. Andrew does not, so he still has to err on the side of just killing it.
But after what we saw in Game 1 with how good Deathrite Shaman was, I don't blame him at all for wanting to kill those things.
No, neither do I. And this is an example of the type of game, the way this is shaping up, where Andrew could potentially get an enormous edge by having Ancestral Visions in his deck. And we're not even talking about having to flip it over with Starless Agent. Just suspending it, given the pace of this game, the fact that Joe really doesn't have anything proactive to do, could give Andrew a huge edge.
Bernal goes with him this go-around. He could have cast Liliana this turn, but he opted not to. What two cards are going to leave Andrew's hand? Tar Pit and the Pulse. Those are obviously two very good cards. Don't know if he needs that land for his third land drop or not. You see there's a Verdant Catacombs. This is a Verdant Catacombs. Going to go down to 17. And once he searches out a land, we'll see what he wants to do on this turn, because it seems to me as though he's got something to do with 3 mana.
And I really like the way that Joe's tried to sculpt these post-board games, which is just run you out of stuff, because I know you have some mixture of threats and reactive cards in your hand. That's basically all your deck is. And then try to kill you incidentally with whatever's left over, be it Stoneforge Mystic or Liliana of the Veil or what have you.
Starless Agent. Spin the wheel.
It's a big reveal. This could be a blank Abrupt Decay, or this could be a huge Ancestral Visions. You can see Tenjum take a deep breath. There's a wide range of things this could be.
Here we go. Wastelands, Liliana, Thoughtseize. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Liliana and E.
I assume we just take the Liliana here and say, all right, it's your removal spell against my creature in the top of our decks.
Yeah, just like we were last time. I think Tenjum believes at the top of my deck may be better than my opponent's top decks. But we'll see. I mean, both players have great ones.
Both players have some real good ones.
Yeah. He's going to pass turn back. I think Swords is the card that was drawn for Joe. When he knew that was coming from the Ponder, so. Tenjum. Deathrite Shaman.
So Joe deciding if he wants to plow this Deathrite Shaman, play Engineer Explosive next turn and use it on the Deathrite Shaman, or just ignore it for the time being.
Yeah, he could go, plow your Charlotte's Agent, Engineer Explosive, your Deathrite Shaman, pass. That's my resources.
I feel like Joe's going to try to hang on to this plow for just a little bit longer. Andrew there's some big Tarmogoyfs potentially that he could draw here. I think he's willing to take 2 damage a turn off of this Charlotte's Agent for a little while. But I think he's going with your path.
Well, we'll see. Just going to trade like crazy here and hope the top deck better. Yeah, that's what he's going to do. He's going to play EE for 1. Yep, blow it up. Probably plays a land in his hand. It's tough. Like, he kind of wants to play land in his hand, but he kind of doesn't want to in case he draws Brainstorm.
Yeah.
There's Deathrite Shaman pass the turn back, so here we go. True Name. Off the top. Pass it.
Let's see if Tenjum can find one of his edicts.
This will help. Brainstorm. 1, 2, 3. Yep, he did. Massacre.
Although Massacre not ideal here as it kills the Deathrite Shaman as well. And given where we're at in Light Tolls, it wouldn't surprise me if Tenjum was willing to race for a little while here. It's 2 damage versus 3 damage, and there's a pretty huge upside because Joe has additional copies of True Name Nemesis, Stoneforge Mystic that he can draw that would be ideal to sweep up with this Massacre. So
yeah, I love this. He's going to try to hook him. So he puts Massacre on top. He's going to play the fetch line. He's going to play the Tarmogoyf. I think what he's going to do is he's got no intentions of breaking that fetch.
Yeah, he's ahead on the race quite substantially with his Tarmogoyf, and if he's ever able to profitably massacre away a second creature and keep his Tarmogoyf in play, that's very good.
Swords rolls off the top here for Joe. We'll get the Tarmogoyf die out there. Let you guys know how big the Lurgoyf is, as here comes the True Name. Tension's going to go down to 14.
I totally get the instinct of just kill the True Name Nemesis right away, but Andrew might want to play a waiting game. There is a risk, of course, if Andrew waits for too long here, that just Umezawa should take off the top, put it on my True Name Nemesis, hit you, now it's out of Massacre range, could be a disaster, but he has a lot more additional copies of True Name Nemesis in his deck and Stoneforge Mystic and such than he has the one Umezawa Jite, of course.
You see Bernal shuffling between that Tropical Island and the Swords to Plowshares, trying to, obviously try to represent something he may or may not have right now. He's just going to pass the turn back. Swords on the upkeep. So Tenjum's going to gain a bunch of life. Going to go up to 20. And so this is really telling because Tenjum doesn't sacrifice the fetch land. So Joe has to believe that, okay, you've got a real card in your hand, and that him.
Oh, no.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. I think Joe has to want to cast this because if Tenjum didn't keep a good card on top of his deck, he just would have cracked the fetch land to get a new card.
Exactly.
So you have to believe that that's a real card in his hand right now.
Yeah, what could it be? And you can see Joe's thinking about it. What could this card be?
He's taking a look at his graveyard.
Are there any cards that could possibly be besides a Massacre? Are there any other symmetrical sweepers? I guess probably not Force of Will. Force of Will is not good enough to keep in this spot with only 4 mana in play.
Actually 5 because of Deathrite, so.
Oh, sure, yep. So I guess Force of Will is in play, although it still seems low impact given the way this game is shaping up right now.
So Bernal doesn't cast the hymn. So Tenjum says, all right, I'm going to use this Deathrite Shaman. Let me pop you for 2 real quick, put you down to 16. Will Tenjum sacrifice this land on his upkeep or not? And he's going to, so he's going to go down to 16. So we're even up here. Going to get Underground Sea. As Tenjum knew there was a land on top of his deck from the Brainstorm. So we got a mystery card coming for him. All mystery cards coming, of course, for Joe off the top of his deck. As these two great players battle on as we're about to be underneath 11 minutes. And again, don't forget, whoever wins this match, probably a lock to be able to draw in for top 8.
Yeah, although I felt we were pretty close. We weren't that far off from 10 rounds. So depending on where breakers are at, people may not be able to draw.
Tenjum takes a draw. It's a land. Tropical Island.
It's cool to me, we watch a lot of games of Legacy where crazy stuff's happening, and it doesn't really resemble anything that looks like Magic. And then you play games like this where it just is who draws the first real card first is the person with a big edge.
I bet he's going to cast him now.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. That is a beating. And now here's Rest in Peace. Jeez. And he's going to want to probably use Deathrite in response.
Yeah.
I hope he doesn't miss this. These 2 points could really matter, or gaining 2 life. There it is.
Yeah, they may be debating between gaining 2 or shooting for
Draining 2, yeah. So Tenjum tried to get a little tricky with the Massacre, wanted to get a little bit more value out of it. Doesn't end up working out that way.
And I feel like Tenjum played that correctly. I would have taken the same line, but...
There's There's Liliana.
Right.
And now he's coming in for 1. So, hey, let's top deck all day long. What's that?
Okay,
Stoneforge,
sure.
yeah. You want to play? We can play. You see Bernal immediately put Stoneforge into play. He's going to get GT. He's going to put that right in. It says, on you, Andrew. You peel now.
Yeah. The games can still be like this sometimes.
Let's see what Tenjum finds. This is a spell. This is
that's a really
that's
good
an
one.
0-1. That's an 0-1. Rest in peace in play.
Never mind. Sorry,
yeah.
rest in peace.
Yeah, it's about as bad as it
was on
gets.
top.
Yep. Now, what that can do is it can block, obviously, so that Liliana doesn't die, or Liliana's at least going to stay at 2. So Bernal says, all right, I'm going to attack this way. And let's see what kind of blocking is going to be done, if any. I think you do have to do this, yeah. You're not happy about this exchange, I think you have to make it. Because that 2 counters going to go on here. Bernal, does he have a spell to play? No, he just passes back, okay. Tenjum takes a draw. Oh, the back and forth of Legacy.
Although Joe now with a pretty substantial edge with the Jitte in play. So every creature he draws is... Andrew goes from having a lot of time to answer to potentially no time to answer.
Tenjum draws. He does what he does. He passes the turn back. Bernal drew Force of Will for the turn. And now he's going to play the Polluted Delta he drew for this turn. So he drew Force of Will last turn. Tenjum's going to come across for 1. Little surprised to see Force of Will in the deck after sideboard. And this really grinded out a fair.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he removed some of them from their deck. But like I said during the sideboarding, it just didn't appear like Joe had a lot to bring in.
Yeah, fair enough. Deathrite Shaman, it looks like, is the draw for this turn. Rest in Peace, making that to be a pretty poor one. A little bit interesting if he wants to put the shields down here on the Force Will. Seems risque.
Any creature is pretty good here for Joe.
Yeah.
Because of the Jitte.
So he is going to play the Deathrite Shaman, equip to the Jitte. Tenjum will untap. He'll take a draw. It looks like Tenjum has found at least 2 lands. He's got a Misty Rainforest, a Wasteland, and a Verdant Catacomb. So he has found 3 lands in this top decking battle. That Deathrite Shaman's looking like a real tough guy right now, as Bernal has drawn Flooded Shrine, almost played it, so he's given away a little bit of information there that Tenjum will likely pick up on. But don't need no information for this coming into the red zone.
And what went back and forth with some really explosive top decks back and forth has now settled down a little bit as both players have drawn a few lanes in a row, but that Force of Will, that hard counter is excellent here.
Yeah. The fact that he can keep the 5 mana up and just ride this GT to victory. See if he wants to activate the GT. I don't think there's any reason just to kill the 1/2 because Deathrite Shaman doesn't really do a lot, but he is going to take care of that right now. Will Bernal. Tenjum will draw a card. It's another land. And as you mentioned, the back and forth affair that we had there, well, Stoneforge Mystic looks like it won that back and forth affair.
Yeah, that was a nice play last turn from Joe. It's very subtle, but you see him play the 6th land and you wonder why would he do that. He's playing around the ability of Tenjum to wasteland him and then resolve something.
Sure.
So there's a pretty big incentive there for Joe to keep the land in his hand as a potential, shuffle if I find Brainstorm sort of thing, but
You see Tenjum drew a Thoughtseize. He passes the turn back. Bernal does have Spell Pierce, Force of Will, and Mystery card. He's going to come in here with Deathrite Shaman. He's going to pump up the jam here a little bit. We'll see exactly how much it's going to be for you. See him doing the math on, okay, how can I close this game out in 2 turns is most likely the question. So you see a little bit of pumping here. You see another activation. That's going to turn into 5 damage. Let's make it 7.
And something we don't get a great appreciation for right now is a lot of what's going on in terms of Joe determining how much he wants to pump is sort of getting a read on Andrew's reaction every time he does pump. Whether or not he believes Andrew may have it, be it Abrupt Decay or whatever else he's playing around.
So it's still going to be 3 turns. As the next attack can be for 7. You see Tenjum at 6, so actually life totals are correct right now. Joe's not going to add any more to the board. There's a Shardless Agent. Can this do anything to get back in the game? Force of Will probably says no. But Tenjum does have that Thoughtseize, so let's not forget about that.
Yeah, he can try to set this up. It requires a lot to break right, of course. But
Yes. It's not impossible, simply improbable, as here is an Underground Sea. Will Bernal perhaps Spell Pierce this? He's going to start by sacrificing Flooded Strand. He's going to go down to 12.
By him fetching here, I believe this means he's going to just hard cast Force of Will.
That's what it looks like. He's got to believe, obviously, that something's probably coming after this, though. And now Tenjum is going to tap that mana.
No reason to let Andrew know that there's a Spell Pierce in your hand.
Of course. Let's trigger the agent. Not you. Thoughtseize. I don't need you. What if he's going to cast this?
It was a big enough cost casting the first one.
Yeah. My life matters.
Yeah.
Our role players up as time the road. Current player finished a turn.
Let's see. It looks like he's going to... I think he's deciding if he wants to cast this Thoughtseize. I figured, okay, what happens if I cast this damage? I go to 4, you remove 2 counters with the GT to kill the agent, and then you're able to attack me for 3. So can I afford to cast this? I think the answer is yes, because I won't die. And Bernal is going to cast Spell Pierce on this. And that is very nice.
It is.
Because one of the lands in play there for Tenjum is a Verdant Catacombs. And so in order for him, Andrew, to resolve this, he'd have to take 1, go to 5, Thoughtseize to put him down to 3, and then if Bernal removes 2 GT counters to take care of Agent, there's 1 left to pump the Deathrite Shaman, 2 + 1 is 3. That would be exact Z's. So that's actually a pretty good Spell Pierce, as Bernal's going to take a draw step here. So Deathrite Shaman and Stoneforge Mystic. In we go. And there's no reason here to clear Shardless Agent out of the way with GT counters, because he can just keep accumulating GT counters for future creatures. Now he's going to play a Stoneforge Mystic.
You don't think there's incentive, now that Joe's has a Stoneforge Mystic, you just throw in a Deathrite Shaman left over, that just connecting when you have a bunch of little creatures in play means something?
I don't think so. I think he's just closing windows, because right now if Tenjum were to draw an Abrupt Decay, it wouldn't matter.
Sure.
Stuff like that. He'd gain 8 life. He'd go up to 19. And I think he'd just be doing things to close out the game now. Like he's also, well secured around Massacre as well right now.
Okay. Yeah, this might be my instinct to just go beat downs too much, but right there I would have tried to connect, I think.
We take turns going beat downs too much. We like to attack.
Yeah.
As Bernal thought about playing the other Deathrite Shaman, opts against it. See another Shardless Agent over there. Can it save Tenjum? Gonna play his land, gonna cast this Shardless Agent. Time to Cascade. That's an Ancestral Visions. All right, let's start it up. 1, 2, 3. Brainstorm among them. I think one of them is a Golgari Charm. He got me to sit up in my chair. The big question here is, it may have been a mistake by Tenjum not using Wasteland to cast that Shardless Agent. We're going to see as he brainstorms into Brainstorm Decay and Tarmogoyf.
Yeah, it is true. This deck is really bottlenecked on colored mana.
Now, the one thing he gets to do, because he did draw a Brainstorm, he can make it a perfect Brainstorm by putting 2 cards back and then sacrificing the Verdant Catacombs that's already in play. Don't forget, he already has played his land. But in order to do that, it will cost a very precious 1 life right now. With Tenjum at 6, every life point does matter.
And there's a Batter Skull looming in all of this, too.
Yes, there is. So how do you navigate? Can he get himself out of this? That Golgari Charm is actually pretty nice because he can turn on his Tarmogoyf, but by doing that, it turns on Joe's Deathrite Shaman. There are a lot of things to weigh into the equation here for the Shardless Bug player as he does resolve his Brainstorm. Now what's Tenjum going to do? He's just going to pass the turn back here, so maybe try to trap him a little bit. We'll see. As Bernal draws a Ponder, so that's a great start for him. Hit 1, 2, 3. Brainstorm flats, and it looks like Liliana the Veil. He's going to immediately add Liliana to his hand, resolves the Ponder. Going to tap 3 mana very quickly, cast the Planeswalker.
Yeah, not having to use his JJ counters fighting over this.
It's great.
Starless Agent is really convenient for Joe.
Now he's going to use the -2. He says, Andrew, sacrifice your Shardless Agent, please. I don't think Andrew wants to oblige. I don't think Andrew has much of a choice. There goes the agent. Here comes Joe. Will he go for broke? Tenjum says, sure. Pump once. Pump twice. Pump 3 times. Sacrifice my Verdant Catacombs. This is going to be an Abrupt Decay, of course, on Deathrite Shaman. You also see here that Bernal did not attack with Stoneforge Mystic. It conveniently has the 2 mana available to be able to put Batter Skull in. So we're on turn 0 here.
And this is sort of the spot I was talking about where, you know, I would have maybe tried to go beat Downs last turn.
Yeah, it could have paid off now.
Yeah. Of course, it's a really specific set of circumstances had to break for that to come up,
But here we are.
here we are.
Yeah.
And now it's possible Tenjum can actually squeeze a draw out of this.
Peels off another Abrupt Decay, which is another huge draw for Tenjum. So he's going to start off with a Brainstorm. Again, this is turn 1. Both players are low enough. We could get into draw territory here now, too. Wow. Liliana, Golgari Charm, and a fetch land. Tenjum moving very, very quickly here.
Although we may as well slow down and take his time a little bit here.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, too. With being in extra turns and stuff like that, I know it was a race against the clock maybe a little bit earlier, but the turns right now are so crucial where you might be able to eke out a game because you have turns 1, 3, and 5. You can pump the brakes a little bit now. Still have to play at a reasonable pace of play, of course. Don't want to get a slow play warning and or warnings, but you can pump the brakes a little bit here and try to figure out what's going to get you to maybe a draw, because maybe a draw here is okay if he wins the next round. He makes it in the top 8 anyway.
Yeah, definitely at the stage these guys are at. I think that a losing position, you would definitely rather take the draw and risk your tiebreakers and having to win next round than the alternative.
There's a Liliana. Liliana's huge here. Because that Abrupt Decay in Tenjum's hand, that's a huge play. So what he can do is he can minus that Liliana. Joe will activate Stoneforge Mystic in response. Here comes Batter Skull. We think. Now there's no reason for Tenjum to respond to this, correct?
No. Because if he responds to the Abrupt Decay, then Joe can simply choose not to put the Batter Skull into play.
So there's your Germ token, yeah. So sacrifice the Stoneforge. No reason to Abrupt Decay at this very moment because it can't be countered. You see Tenjum considering his options yet again. Turn 1 of extra turns, don't forget. Pass the turn back. Tenjum might be thinking, hey, I could probably get him here. It's going to be turn number 2 now. I think what Tenjum's thought process is, okay, he's going to equip the GTA over to the Germ token. He has to attack me because I'm at 5. He attacks me. He has to pump with the GTA to make it be lethal, and then I Abrupt Decay the token, and now the GTA has no counters. The Batter Skull is basically empty. Maybe I can start to turn the corner here a little bit. And I think right now Tenjum's probably playing for a draw.
Yeah.
So.
But doesn't it make a lot more sense to just Abrupt Decay the Stoneforge Mystic and edict away the Germ token?
Well, Stoneforge Mystic is gone. Back to Liliana.
No, that's what I'm saying. If you're in Tenjum's seat, like, why even allow this germ to be in play at all?
As opposed to what? What's the other play?
You go Abrupt Decay your Stoneforge Mystic.
Okay.
Presumably this causes Bernal to put his Batterskull Germ token into play. You then play Liliana and minus it, and now it's very hard for Joe to kill you in time.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Different sequencing, as it were. And Joe's going to get this Abrupt Decay here.
I guess it's all the same. If he's planning on just Abrupt Decaying the Germ.
Yeah, I mean,
it's all the same
Yeah,
stuff,
I mean, this way,
suppose.
I think this way gets the counter off the GT, which could actually end up battering.
Sure, okay.
As we see a Brainstorm here in the second main phase from Joe, he's going to draw a Marsh Flash, a Scrubland, and then a Ponder. So he's going to put back, looks like 2 lands.
John Donovan and Martin Shane, please report to
Don't forget, Joe's not activated his Liliana the Veil yet either.
John Donovan and Martin Shane, please report to the main event scorekeeper.
So now he's going to cast Ponder. Again, don't forget, Bernal turn number 2. He needs to get a creature in play like this turn. All right, time to shuffle. He's got a spike like a Stoneforge Mystic. Deathrite Shaman.
And this feels like a spot where Joe is certainly favored if this game was able to play out to its natural conclusion.
It feels really close to me, honestly. Tenjum has done such a nice job of coming back. He's got Answer to Rest in Peace.
Yeah.
You know, he's got Liliana in play. Here comes the mystery card off the Ponder. 1, 2, not a creep. Deathrite. Ooh. Play Deathrite, equip it, pass. Tick up, go. Okay. Hold the phone here. Tenjum draws turn 3. He's got a Tarmogoyf and a Misty Rainforest.
Oh, I think you need to keep that. I think you may need to keep that Golgari Charm, because that would allow him to just -1 the -1 Deathrite Shaman and draw the game at 1 life. With that Tarmogoyf the Liliana has that covered through the Edict, and Andrew's looking at exact lethal.
He's going to play Tarmogoyf. He's just got the land. Bernal's going to untap. Bernal's turn 4. This is his last turn of the game. Joe draws a card. He ticks.
I mean, the die is cast.
Yeah, he ticks
Joe
down
does
Liliana.
What he can do here.
He's going to equip Batterskull to the Deathrite Shaman. Send in. And that is it. Joe Bernal is going to win this match in turn 4 of extra turns. Last possible turn of the game. Moves on to 7-1. Gives Andrew Tenjum his second loss. And with any luck, able to draw in to the top 8 next round. What a match.
That was incredible.